let's change the conversation now and bring in a political perspective to this lockdown by President Muhammadu Buhari, because it's generated some sort of controversy. There are those who've asked for the legality of it all, and there are those who say, you know, there are no details to the lockdown in particular. Let's bring in our next guest, Mr. Adelaja, who is of the Action Democratic Party here in Lagos. Mr. Adelaja, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the morning show. Great to have you.
Good morning.
What I do understand, your party, clarify, your party or yourself have a problem with the president's pronouncement of a lockdown on 2 states and the Federal Capital Territory, and that's Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT.
Yeah, we only sought for clarification to know if the lockdown is essentially for interstate or within the state. Of course, where the message out there is for everybody to stay at home. But of course, we understand that there are a few sectors in the economy that are allowed to go about skeletal activities like some of the banks, you know, media and this and that. And also, don't forget that food sellers also are exempted. So, you know, the process of moving from their home to those places is what we are, you know, asking. If everybody is totally on lockdown, that they must not move from point A to point B. That clarification needs to be, you know, given to people. Because why we are sorting for such a clarification is that 14 days is not 1 or 2 days. And we understand the way Nigerian people live, that some of them, they survive based on daily money they make. And 14 days, some of these people might not be able to survive if they cannot move from one place to the other, maybe from their home to, you know, major markets in their area. They can decide and say they want to buy, you know, some goods and things like that, and it might not be what they can carry by their hands. So is it possible for a car to move from, let's say, 0.5 kilometers from my house to the market and purchase something and blow them in my bag and, you know, my boot and take them back home? So those clarifications need to be made by the governor of Lagos State, Ogun State, and probably the FCT minister.
But correct me if I'm wrong, there was a story making the rounds, and in fact, it's not making the rounds, it's true, that people in satellite areas will be given palliatives like food and the likes. And this segues into, you know, adequate preparation made for people that, you know, pretty much live from, I don't want to use the word hand to mouth, but they live by the day for their meal. Do you think the preparation has been enough as regards people like this?
As far as I know, and from information I gathered, I have not seen anybody who has confirmed that palliative has been given to them, the people in the satellite environment. What we have seen so far is individuals, you know, and some of the politicians, you know, giving people some form of palliatives in their probably constituencies. So that's what we have seen so far. But from the federal government, I have not seen anything, or I have not heard anything in that direction. And of course, we need to be careful as well, because one of the arguments I saw was that people should be given opportunity to have maybe direct transfers through their bank account or something like that to avoid this spread, because we know definitely the way some of our people behaves, that you want to share, let's say, a 10 bag of rice to people now, and they'll be on queue, and before you know, everywhere will be rowdy, and before you know, there'll be contact. The contact that we are trying to avoid, you understand, will still happen. So that's why I say we have to be careful. We have to know how some of these processes should follow, so that we don't end up trying to say we want to give palliative or want to extend our love to people as an individual, and at the end of the day, you know, what we don't want to happen, you know, eventually happen.
In a time as this, where fighting ignorance and fake news is at the forefront of the media, how do you reckon we begin to make sure that we have almost a one-size-fits-all message that is being spread out? Because we do have a lot of shadow zones in Nigeria, people that are not necessarily informed and know about this disease and even the reasons why they've been told to stay at home. How do we begin to fix this?
Well, in one of the press releases we issued from ADP was that we talked to the federal government that at this time they should work very hard to ensure that electricity is available to Nigerians. Of course, some of the factories are closed that consume a lot of megawatts of electricity. So now this electricity can be, distributed to homes so that people can have direct information, correct information from the media, from the government. And also, what government can do is to engage critical stakeholders, that can help in disseminating this information to the people. There are people who are influential in the society who can also join part of this, message of peace. Because one key thing we have to take out now at this critical time is preaching message of hope and love. Because coronavirus is not a death sentence. People must understand that. People must understand that. Of course, we have seen, we have heard the news of people who have been treated, discharged from Lagos State. I also heard today that someone who tested positive in Oyo State before has been discharged and is now tested negative. So this should tell us naturally that coronavirus is not a death sentence. It's not something that we need to be too much apprehensive or allow fear to come into us, because one of the ways we can fight the coronavirus is when we continue to preach message of peace, message of hope that anybody can have it, and when you have it does not mean that you are automatically a dead person. It should not lead to something that will lead to stigmatization. So these are things that the government these are the message government need to push out. Because if you look at NCDC, what they do is they keep, announcing the number of victims every day. Of course, it's commendable. At least it's right information at the right, time. But they also need to continue to tell us that this thing is not a death sentence. It can happen. You can contact it by mistake or through one way or the other. But that does not mean that you are going to die. These are what steps that we have been taking that people are getting healed. By the time this information gets out, people will now be a bit more relaxed, because the worst part is for people to die as a result of ignorance or as a result of fear. You understand? So those things are things that we, all of us as stakeholders, critical stakeholders, need to continue to tell the Nigerian people while they are at home. And also we see how we are going to also work on the economic side of it, because Corona will come and go. Just the same way Ebola came and left. HIV/AIDS, at some point in time, everybody are afraid. People are afraid to get close to people with HIV/AIDS and things like that because of the stigmatization. Because there wasn't proper information to the people that this is not a death sentence. People can contract disease. It's just like you have malaria. You understand? You have typhoid. You go to hospital, you treat this thing, and you come out of it. You understand? So it's not something that, people will say, oh, coronavirus, because people are dying in Italy. If you look at the genetic composition of people in Africa, and you look globally, the statistic of people who have died as a result of coronavirus in Africa, in the entire Africa, you see that the figure is very small. It's not, in fact, the total sum is not up to what the number of people that died in Italy in a day. So this should be a message to us as African people, because we must protect ourselves. We must ensure that the chain of the virus, we cut it, and also we must ensure that people are not apprehensive or agitative or the fear in them.
I totally agree with you that we should send those messages of hope out as well. But I'm looking through your press release, and I do see that you also have a problem with the school feeding program that the president says must go on at this time. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, Sadia Farouk, addressed the press yesterday at that joint press briefing by the presidential task force on COVID-19. Her explanations are that her ministry is in talks with state governors and coordinators of this school feeding program for it to go on even beyond Lagos, Ogun, and FCT at the moment, because schools are locked down nationwide, and that this will provide some succor for families and for the children to continue to have these meals, even though it's once a day. What exactly is your problem with the school feeding program going ahead at this time?
By the creation of that program, it is called school feeding. And what it means is that people, the beneficiary of this program, should be in school, not at home. That should be that is the simple definition. So you cannot be talking about school feeding program, call it school feeding program when children are in their home with their parents. What we are talking about, what government should be talking about, is palliative. Because if I am a parent, I have children, and you give me palliative, I'm going to use that palliative. My children also will benefit from that palliative. So for us, we feel there should be modification to that, because under humanitarian, and disaster management, of course, they are also critical stakeholder in managing, the it is a school feeding program, because an average person hearing that heard Mr. President, read that part of his speech, they were taken aback and said, wow, but students are at home with their parents. Some of us are parents. We know our children are at home with us. So how are these things going to get to the children? So the question is, we should be talking about palliative to Nigerians, not the school feeding program at this time, because the name of the program does not justify, what they are trying to do at this moment. So what we should be talking about, okay, for instance, look at Lagos State, Ogun State, and FCT that is being on a lockdown. You understand? Government did not talk about palliative measures for these people for the 14 days window that they are being locked in their home. So I believe that that should be the priority, not school feeding program. Like I said before, COVID-19 will come and go. After this thing now, students are going to resume in their school. Then we can continue the program at that time, but not at this time that everybody is living under fear. What we should be talking about is preaching message of hope, message of love to people, and see how we are going to extend love among ourselves. If you have and your neighbor does not have, you find a way to help them out. So that should be what we should be doing at this point in time.
You made mention of the fact that government did not provide federal palliatives, for those 14 days. There was a case for a federal palliative. There's a case for federal palliative. And I also have qualms with you saying that school feeding is not important at this season. I mean, Welcome back to the Morning Show right here on Arise News. And I've got a couple of rebuttals. Number one, you talked about the fact that there's no federal palliative. I totally disagree with that. There is a provision for federal palliative. You can make a case for not just in the federal palliative, but there's a provision. There are pictures, even by the Lagos state government, as regards palliative in people living in satellite towns and things like that. Three, I have qualms with you talking about the fact that the school feeding program is not needed. There are soup kitchens everywhere in the world. That can also be used to bolster the family. Let's not forget the fact that a lot of people depend on this food, and this meal goes a long way to be able to help those families. So they could be dropped and delivered to those children, and they could even share with their families.
Well, I think if you understand what I'm trying to say, you see, I did mention that at this point in time, you cannot be talking about school feeding program, because that's the name they call it. You understand? An average person hearing that will have problem with that. But if federal government you say, okay, during this point in time, we are going to have school children, support program. You understand? To support children while they are home. That may sound better, you understand, but you cannot say school feeding. When you say school, meaning that school, that event must take place in school. So that's my argument. You understand? So, but you see, it's a matter of understanding. I believe that shouldn't be an issue that should be overflogged. You understand what I'm saying? So governments can find a way around it and ensure that those things actually gets to the children while they are at home at this point in time. You understand? So because it's not, if you read very well, it's not as if maybe we condemn, we say it's not a good program. It's a good program. It's lovely. It's going to support the children. We're only just seeking the clarification that, okay, if you call it school program, school feeding program, so how are this thing going to get to the children when they are not in school? So it is now behoove on the government to come out and explain that this is how they intend to do it. And we also are going to take that message also to people as critical stakeholder in Nigeria. So I believe it's not out of place to ask such question. And you talking about federal palliative, I have not heard of anybody who has received, the palliative. If I have received, I will tell you. I've only told you that I've seen individuals and Nigerians, some politicians, making donations and here and there and sharing 1 or 2 relief materials in their constituency. I confirm that because I have seen that. So when we see, of course, this conversation is still going to be ongoing during this period and after. So if I have seen and we have made confirmation, we will come and say, because we need to inform Nigerians rightly, because we cannot say what we are not sure of, what we don't have confirmation about. So I believe that that's it.
Qualify for the palliative. You are not supposed to receive the palliative. It's under people pre-existing under the conditional cash transfer. You don't qualify for that. You're not the lowest of the rung of the society. I mean, you lead a political party, and you should have some means and some ways. So you say you've not received it. Goodness me. You don't qualify.
You're one of the states on a lockdown. So...
Talking about the contributions of the Action Democratic Party. I mean, we do have a lot of corporations that have come forward to donate in their own way. But 2 places that seems to be lacking is increasing the capacity of these testing labs, as we know that the test is actually the key to being able to separate those that have the virus from those that don't and begin to isolate them. So what's been done to help the government increase the capacity of testing labs, as well as, at this point, contact tracing? Yesterday, it was said by the NCDC that for every case that we find, they have about 50 to 60 possible contacts. So the use of manpower to help the NCDC as well as the government to begin to trace the contacts that these people have come in contact with. What's being done by the Action Democratic Party?
Is to continue to sensitize Nigerians on how to stay healthy and how to keep fit, and what they can do is like social distancing and things like that to avoid contact. For one of the things we have done, immediately the issue broke out, we suspended all our political activities across the country from the ward to the national level. Nobody is allowed to have any meeting, whether 2, 3, 20 or whatever. We make sure that our activities now should be online. We have websites, we have chat groups, we have this where we can interact and talk and take critical decisions on what we need to do as a party, as a way forward. So that is one of the things we have put in place. And also we are also joining the federal government and the state government in all the 36 states to preach the message and to amplify what Nigerians should do and what they should not do at this point in time. So I believe that's one of the key things that all of us we need to do, because for us to defeat this scourge, every one of us, where you in the media, we in the Nigerians, all of us, we need to come together to join hands together and ensure that we get rid of this thing on time. Because the longer this thing takes, the bigger the problem it creates for us in our economy. Because there's no business going on. It's just skeletal business we have. And just like the way other diseases have come and gone, this one too will come and go. But we don't need to stay too long on it so that everybody can get back to their normal businesses and we get things done. Then on the capacity of the NCDC to ensure that they have capacity to test people who are infected and things like that. One of the things we suggested is that we have a lot of retired health workers that are here and there. So federal government still have their database. They can call some of them back back and, and distribute them to various states that they have to join the states, team, so that the work, the more people. Then we can also have people who have, one or two experience in medicine and in medical field who can volunteer to be part. So government also should be able to call for volunteers who can come out and join them, and they have some form of trainings. You understand? They would first test them to ensure that they are not infected. Then they can train them on basic things they need to do, and they can join the pool, so that quickly we can roll this thing. Then another thing we said is that in all the states of the federation, the government should set up isolation centers, because of it's like the concentration is only in Lagos, Abuja, but there are people who have migrated to some other states across the country. So we need to have testing, lab in all the states. Like the donation, the federal government, the 10 billion given to Lagos State, then government also should find a way to see how they can help other states also with funding, with equipment, and some other things. Then so that because if we don't at every state get set to ensure that whoever that escaped to any state are quickly tested and treated, then it might be hard for us to contain it on time. But if facilities are present in every state of the federation, including FCT Abuja, with the test and where they can possibly treat them if they are infected, then I'm telling you, within one week or thereabouts, we are going to make a great breakthrough that even nations across the world will be asking Nigeria, and they will even be sending people to Nigeria for treatment. Of course, that's another form of dollar inflow for us, because if we are treating people, of course we are going to charge them. So I believe that's one of the ways we can go.
Adelaja, it's good to have opposition parties, not just in times of election. One would have wondered, one of the opposition parties in the country, you'll be doing more than just criticizing and just the suggestions which you have said. But I want to take you back to my initial question when I asked you your concerns raised by the declaration to lock down Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State. And you said your party is not clear on what the president exactly wanted. In paragraph 35 of that speech, it was very clear. It says all citizens in these areas are to stay in their homes. Travel to or from other states should be postponed. All businesses and offices within these locations should be fully closed during this period. And then it goes ahead to give further clarification for who is exempted. But in rounding up and very quickly, tell me, beyond this suggestion for the testing capacity which you talked about, what other suggestions are you giving? What ways would this have been better for the next 14 days?
Well, for the next 14 days, of course, like we have seen, because I was at some malls and supermarkets yesterday, I see that food items are gradually disappearing from their shelf. So, of course, the capacity to refill these things is what I am not so sure of. So, basically, what people need between now and the next 14 days is food, drink, and drugs. You understand? Possibly little money in their pockets in case they need to restock and things like that. So these are why we are calling on everybody that let us share message of hope, message of love, you understand, so that while we are at home, if you see your neighbor hungry, if you can help, you need to help them, so that all of us can stay alive, because we wouldn't want a situation whereby more people will die even as a result of hunger than the coronavirus itself. So that's why I am calling on every Nigerian that it's time for us to come together.
That's the much we can take. Mr. Adeniyi Adelaja is the National Publicity Secretary of the Action Democratic Party of Nigeria. Much appreciated your presence on the show today.